Welcome to Aspire, and I Have the Right To podcast, where we amplify voices, share stories, and drive change in the fight against sexual assault. We explore the critical issues surrounding student safety, institutional accountability, and survivor empowerment. In every episode, our goal is to provide insightful conversations with survivors, experts, educators, and advocates, giving you, our listener, valuable information, resources, and actionable steps to create safer environments and cultivate a culture of respect and consent.
Welcome back to the Aspire podcast from I Have the Right To. I'm Susan Prout, co-founder of I Have the Right To.
And I'm Chessy Prout, also co-founder of I Have the Right To.
Today, we're thrilled to welcome back guest co-host Maria Halter, one of our incredible interns and a student at Georgetown University. We're very, very excited to have her join us today.
I'm super excited to be here. Thank you.
Today, we have the pleasure to be in conversation with two troublemakers for good, Bari Harlam and Meredith Curran.
Bari began her career as a marketing professional at Columbia's graduate school, the University of Rhode Island, and as an adjunct faculty at the University of Pennsylvania's Wharton School, where she received her PhD. Bari is also a successful C-suite business leader, a marketer, educator, and author with extensive experience as a board director and advisor for corporations and nonprofit organizations. Meredith earned an MBA from Columbia University, where she received the Hutchinson Award for Entrepreneurship and served as the first president of Columbia Women in Business. Meredith was the owner and CEO of Pease & Curran, a precious metals refinery, is a board member across many nonprofits, and notably served Rhode Island Governor Gina Raimondo as a senior advisor from 2015 to 2021.
Together, these powerhouse women started the organization Trouble with the goal of raising as much money as possible for nonprofits doing the hard work of closing gender equity gaps. I had the pleasure of meeting Meredith and Bari in 2020, just a month after they launched Trouble, when we partnered together to create an I Have the Right To necklace, which I am wearing right now. Trouble celebrates women who are bold and aren't afraid to make a little trouble in an effort to change the world for the better. And we could not be more excited to talk to them today.
Bari and Meredith, welcome to Aspire.
Thank you for having us. We're thrilled to be here.
Great to be here.
Now, I wanted to start the conversation today, starting with the word that you've named your organization and the phrase troublemakers for good. The word trouble has so many different meanings and connotations, both negative and teasing and positive, I guess, in this instance. How did you land on the word trouble as the name of the organization? And was there a specific moment or a turning point in both of your lives that caused you to embark on this journey together?
Well, the origin, Trouble, the name came from a vacation that I was on with our family. We were traveling in Japan, and among many fun things we were doing, we visited a sake brewery, and that's part one of the story. So we were at the sake brewery and traveling around the rice fermenting room and various other staging for the sake. And in the fermenting room, there were speakers in the ceiling, and there was a talk track in Japanese that we didn't understand. And the sake master explained that the talk track was stand-up comedians. There was a lot of laughter and talking, and that they believed that if the rice was exposed to humor and laughter during the fermenting process, that it would make their sake the best tasting sake in the world. So we loved that. We thought it was fun, and they really were genuine about their commitment to the humor and happiness and positive feelings for the sake throughout the staging. And then the second part of the story was we were on a train ride. We were traveling around Japan, and I was sitting next to a young man who was from Scotland, and he explained to me that he was there to learn kanji, and he asked if I wanted to learn any on the trip. So I said, sure, of course, great use of our train travels, and he started drawing characters and said, this is a house, and this is a man, and this is a woman. And if you put the characters for the man and the woman underneath the house, it creates a new character that is meaning home. And I thought, okay, that's beautiful. And then he said, do you know what happens if we put two women under the house? And I said, no, I don't. And he said, that creates a new character that means trouble. And I said, really? And what happens if we put two men in the house? And he said, oh, that's not a word. So later that night, we were at dinner, and I said to our family, you know what, we should start a sake company, and we should name it Trouble. And instead of the rice listening to stand-up comedians, why don't we have the rice listen to badass women? And our rice will be the best tasting rice in the world. And so that became the origin story for Trouble. Of course, we don't produce sake, but we do honor and recognize badass troublemaking women like you, Chessy, and celebrate them and celebrate their inspiration for the Trouble community.
That's amazing. That's a fascinating story behind that.
Yeah, I will also share, Meredith and I had a number of sleepless nights because as we were preparing for the launch, we should have known about John Lewis and his Trouble speech, but it wasn't top of mind for us in all of the work that we were doing around our organization. And as many of the folks listening would probably know, we launched on August 18th of 2020, as you already mentioned, Chessy, and John Lewis's movie was coming out. A couple of months before that, there was some publicity, and all of a sudden we connected the dots and around his Trouble, amazing, inspirational speeches. And he was ailing, and then he passed away right before we launched. And so we were very sensitive to the idea that we didn't want to be appropriating in any way that was misunderstood. So we had an opportunity to consult our advisory board, which is a number of incredible people who shared with us, the perspective that everything we were doing was aligned with the legacy that he and his supporters would want to have. And they encouraged us to move forward and not delay or rename or all the other options that we were considering. But many people think that we named the organization Trouble because of John Lewis and his remarkable work. And we're, thrilled to have it connected in any way, unintentionally, but in spirit around the mission and the objectives that we have, and that he lived a life to make better in the world and in our country.
That is such an incredible backstory of the name of the organization, and feels so aligned with our family's history. Just hearing that was hatched in Japan, where I grew up and where my parents met, it just feels like kismet. And I also wanted to, the way that sort of connection reminds me of how the world works in such crazy and mysterious ways. There was a very meaningful moment when we were visiting Capitol Hill, talking with lawmakers about the issue of sexual violence and sexual assault, when my parents and I stood in a congressional elevator, and who walks in but John Lewis, and gives us the warmest smile and greeting that he probably didn't know how much we needed it, coming from somebody with such a storied career and legacy. But both sort of impetuses for the name Trouble mean so much to us, and I'm just so grateful that we've been connected.
And I have to just add, I really believe in this journey. We're not too far apart, I don't think, in age. I think we're pretty close, right? And so I really believe no one should ever be discouraged if they find someone else has, quote unquote, the same idea, because that just shows you it's a really good thought, and we should really just learn to work together on those ideas. And I think that's such a beautiful story. I love it.
That's amazing. It's so great to hear that. And yeah, honestly, when I was looking into you guys, I did think about John Lewis and his good trouble impact. So that's amazing that you have such a great backstory to tell. But I was also curious to see. So, as Chessy and Susan mentioned, both of you have extensive, impressive backgrounds prior to founding Trouble. I was curious as to how your personal or professional experiences and identities have shaped the mission of the organization.
I would say our personal and professional backgrounds have shaped it immensely. We have known each other since we had our kids, and we both were in professional environments where there weren't that many women, and we talked often about like what a drag it is to be treated differently. And we said, what is our next chapter? What do we care about and what do we want to do? And because of our experiences, we both said gender equity, like that is where we see the greatest barrier to not just women, but the world. So that was the genesis of Trouble.
So, as you both know, I have the right to provide programming, workshops, keynotes to schools and communities around the topics of consent, healthy relationships, sexual assault, and aspirational masculinity, which I like to think is really aspirational humanity. We also believe the foundation of all these conversations is claiming your rights to your voice and your rights to respect and to safety. I think we're all on the same page about that. Can we talk together about what advice you, Bari and Meredith, would give to young people regarding the stumbling blocks they might encounter and that you alluded to in claiming your voice in their fields of work, in their lives, in their communities? Maybe share what you encountered along your own professional and personal journeys. And is there anything you would have done differently, or is there any advice you would give to kids, young people going forward?
Well, I think among many reasons that the work that I Have the Right to does is so valuable is that for me, it's taken a long time to become comfortable with things that I think I should have been comfortable saying, or in ways to respond much earlier in my life. And an organization that provides that training at times that are so much more valuable than when you're at the end of your career, but more at the beginning of your life, is truly invaluable, because I think that we are all taught in a variety of ways what the right behavior is and what the right thing is to do, and being able to learn that speaking up and responding in ways that evidence your own confidence and respect for yourself is the right thing to do, versus worrying about what other people are going to think, or all the other friction elements that get in the way of doing what you say to yourself later you should have said in the moment, is truly invaluable. Those moments make a difference throughout so many days, weeks, months, years later. And if you can respond in a way that you're proud of in the moment, I'm speaking about my own experiences when I'm saying that, I think you end up being so much more true to yourself, and also you provide more evidence to the people around you about what the right thing is. But some of it's self-fulfilling, because in my experience, there are times when I've worried much more about what other people might think about what I'm going to say versus what I should be worrying about, which is, how am I going to feel about how I respond and what I say, and what really is the right thing for me, which should be the right thing for other people. There shouldn't be any misalignment there. So the work that you do allows the learning, imprinting, confidence building for women and men and all people around what the right way is to interact with each other and how to respect each other. And there's really nothing more important around our culture and our community, and it has ripple effects in so many ways. So are there lessons learned? I for sure have many moments where I could recall, and I'll just pick one where I was in a meeting. I was working for a company that was led by men. All of the senior people were men. I was the only woman. And it was a culture that allowed for things that today are very clearly, in my own mind, things that I should have responded to in very different ways in so many situations. But there was one meeting where the comments were directed at me versus just said in a meeting that were about other women and cultural things. And in that moment, I didn't say anything. Nobody else in the room spoke up. And it did create a moment for me to say, I really do need to change the way that I interact. This isn't okay. It's causing me a lot of pain and consuming so much energy. I keep replaying it in my mind. But I was well beyond, the age of the folks that your organization is working with and teaching, and again, men and women, because the problem is men and women. So that moment was a moment where it was a sexual comment. It was directed at me. It was remarkably disrespectful. And I just shut down. I didn't know how to respond. I didn't have a playbook of things that I could say. And again, I've been in situations with this group multiple times, but it was never directly targeted at me, and it wasn't directly really inappropriate sexually. And so I think that being able to create the imprinting of appropriate behavior, giving women and men the confidence to say and do the right things that evidence that respect is the starting point for effective culture, effective organizations, effective teams. It has so much value in so many ways, but at the very core, it allows people to feel comfortable about what they could and should do for themselves. And I thank you for that, because I know that if someone had exposed me to the work that I Have the Right to does much earlier in my life, that I would have gotten a lot more sleep, and I would have been able to model behavior for lots of other women and lots of other men in the organizations that I led, that would have created a tremendous amount of value for the organization and made people, most importantly, feel good about who they are, what they are, and how what are the right rules of engagement and behavior with each other.
Well, so much of what you've shared that you've learned throughout your career, and then also through your incredible conversations that you have with, the coined troublemakers, is what we talk about or try to convey to students when we speak with them at I Have the Right To. So much of my story would have been so different if people had just stood up and said no, had stood up to the rape culture that existed at my school, or had stood up in support of me and my family and the 10 girls who had come before me, abused by my perpetrator. What you were talking about reminded me so much, Meredith, of the Desmond Tutu quote, neutrality helps the oppressor, never the victim. And I always remind students when I speak to them and deliver my keynote that silence is deafening. It is one of the more hurtful things when a survivor is experiencing the aftermath of a trauma. And so it really makes me encouraged to hear that not only have you been working on this throughout your careers, helping women feel supported and heard and seen and recognized, but the work that Trouble is doing to give women voices, not just for those troublemakers anybody who's a troublemaker, a voice, but you're also therefore providing a path for young people who are coming up and who are looking for those leaders who might be doing things differently than the way that we've seen them been done before. Were there any people in your lives that you looked up to as troublemakers as you were growing up or going through your secondary education and graduate schools and PhDs and entering the workforce?
Well, I'm going to call out my dad, who, I was really privileged in growing up in a family that, could put food on the table, was able to send me to college. I had basic safety, and my dad was very focused on reinforcing that you can do anything. I also have a brother who has a disability. He's deaf. And so I think that also played a critical role in his messaging around anyone can do anything. You have to pursue it. It doesn't mean that, you're going to get every dream you have, but part of the joy is the journey. And so that messaging was very impactful. I also think that in some ways, in hindsight, it was misleading because I thought everybody thought that way, not just my dad. So that was part of the learning process was, just because I grew up in this wonderful environment, that doesn't mean the world works that way. And slowly but surely, I've learned that and have moved on from it. But he was a troublemaker in a lot of different ways, and most importantly, in providing a foundation for his kids to realize that they were growing up in an awesome situation and that they should take advantage of all of those opportunities, even if everything doesn't go your way. The other one I'll call out is a college professor I had, and it's it was a women in law course that I took, and I really loved this professor, but I didn't agree with most of the things that she was teaching us because I had grown up in this environment and had no experience virtually in pockets of the world where you couldn't just do anything because you were going to add value, work hard, and be committed to winning. She was very focused on representing the structural barriers and some of the things to overcome around the situations that we've all been talking about. So she's someone who I appreciated in the moment because she was open to my challenges around not really buying all the discriminatory data and support that she shared. But she's also someone that I've had a continuing relationship with because I've had the opportunity to reach out back to her later and say thank you. And I get it in a way today that I didn't when you were sharing it with me. And so she's played an ongoing role throughout buying everything, not buying everything she had to say, and now buying it in a way that is accompanied by my own personal experiences that support some of the information that she was trying to share at a time where I would be able to learn from it maybe more deeply than I did at that moment.
I love that. It is so important to have good teachers in your world. And if you are blessed to have a father that is pushing for you. And I would say the same thing, a great teacher and a great father who spoke up and told me what it was like to make good trouble when you saw an injustice.
It's amazing to hear you guys talk about the mentors and heroes and people that have guided you throughout your lives and careers, especially since in this day and age, it can feel kind of fraught to seek out mentorship because there is a broader awareness of the power dynamics in play with like between a mentor and a mentee. And a lot of times those situations and relationships can lead to abuse or grooming. And so I think, there's a lot of both ands in what we do. And like what you were talking about, Bari, too, about your law professor who said, or the professor about women in law, who was telling you all the bad, like all the things that are going to get in your way. There's such a fine balance between knowing what the barriers are and becoming aware of the barriers and the dangers and the bad things that could happen. Like my mom likes to say to us, well, you could die if we try to do something gutsy or risky. I'm sorry, Mom, but it is also so important to have that viewpoint of, well, but what if there is so much more beyond the dangers and the bad things and the barriers? There are people who are constantly breaking barriers, and all three of you women, and for Maria as well. But I'm just so thankful for you, Mom, Meredith, and Bari, as women of an older generation who have actively broken down those barriers for people like Maria and I, who are coming up in the world, knowing that the status quo does not have to be the status quo, that the barriers that exist do not have to exist, and to recognize that the privileges that we hold are such a wonderful asset, but only if we're bringing people up with us. And so I think it's just amazing to get to hear your stories and hear your experiences. And I just feel so lucky that you're so open about what you've learned, because as somebody who is always looking for answers and the next right thing to do, the next path, it's really helpful to hear what has worked for you guys and what hasn't.
Yeah, and that perfectly leads me into this next question that I have for you guys about relationships and relationship building. We believe that all these topics are necessary to discuss to create ecosystems of respect and communities free from sexual assault. And so much of what shines through when sharing Chessy's story in particular is the importance of positive and healthy friendships and support. So, because you guys were both friends prior to this, prior to starting your organization, I'm curious as to what it's been like going into business as friends and how that has adapted and shaped what you guys have created.
Truly a gift. I mean, it's a gift of this situation that we're in, meaning we have known each other for so long, and this is a time in our life where we can be all in on in areas that we've tried to make a difference in throughout the rest of our life, but we have the gift of time and resources in a way that we didn't earlier with younger kids and college bills to pay and so forth. So the idea that many times there are competing goals that people have that get in the way of working together as a team and doing what they want to do to advance something. In this case, the something is totally clear. It shaped so many conversations, so many experiences that we had before we started Trouble. And it isn't about anything other than trying to make a difference in areas that we're passionate about. Our egos are not, a factor in a way that maybe they would have been in different situations or different times in our life, or if we were working on something that in and of itself wasn't so clearly the goal. So it's been amazing. And the other thing that Meredith and I talk about is the unexpected joy of being able to meet people like you, which started from the very beginning. As you said, Chessy, we met you right after we launched. We never really anticipated that what was going to be so motivating was our own ability to hear stories and inspiration from amazing people. I mean, I think we knew that was part of the goal, but we didn't really internalize how energizing that was going to be. And we both get so much value from that. And we get to do it together. So it really is a remarkable opportunity and gift.
There is such a value in hearing and sharing stories, whether it be people's real life stories or fictional stories, in any sort of way, shape, or form, writing, film, television, audio, songs. But it is really wonderful to hear you talk about that sort of positive aspect that's come out of creating this organization, and is such a great reminder that so much growth and fulfillment comes in finding community and in building community and in building bridges between people. That's something that my parents instilled in me and my sisters at a very young age, that building, introducing people, connecting people is such a wonderful, valuable thing to do. And not just for networking and business and things like that, but if people, if we think that people have the same values and would enjoy each other, it's just a really cool idea to have for the sort of nonprofit and advocacy space. So I did want to ask a timely question of which of these troublemakers are giving you hope today?
We've talked to a number of women of all different ages, from all different industries, from from folks that are artists who share their voice in creative ways without saying the words, but creating the imagery that evokes confidence and shapes culture for folks that look at their work. I think, even calling out some well-known folks that, like Taylor Swift. I love that Taylor Swift is taking the bold moves around the business side and ownership of her property and work and creations. I love Serena Williams and her next chapter after tennis. I certainly love her tennis capabilities, but her launching of her next career and dealing with criticism recently around decisions that she makes about choices for her health and wellness. So I think the point that you made earlier, Chessy, the idea that there are many people that we have the opportunity to observe and learn from, and they create massive cultural changes that so many people can touch and feel and experience in a variety of different ways is great. And then we also celebrate those quiet troublemakers who are behind the scenes, but they're being the friend and supporter of people like you, Chessy, when you are in a situation that's truly inconceivable, and they provide those comments and messages and listening to give you support, or any of us support, in those moments where we're really dealing with the unfathomable and trying to find some sorts of strength to stay on the path of doing what the right thing is. So, there are numerous folks, obviously, that play the role in the big cultural change and in the quiet, supportive, very meaningful moments kind of way. And we like to celebrate all of them.
I think both of you gave such incredibly salient advice that really makes a lot of sense. And the other thing I would say, too, is that your life is a bunch of chapters. Just because the first job you do doesn't mean you've signed your whole life's contract. You are going to have beautiful chapters. And I used to say that to my girls at bedtime and say, I've had all these different hats and jobs, and they've all been really interesting. And now I'm your mom, because I wanted them to know I had a lot of other jobs than just being a mom at that moment. But yeah, no, that's beautiful, Meredith, and wonderful, Bari. Chessy shared her own "I have the right to" statement nearly 10 years ago when she bravely came forward as a survivor in high school and went on to co-found our organization. As part of that tradition, we'd like to ask our guests to complete their own "I have the right to" statement in a way that's meaningful to them. Would you like to share? Would you be willing to share an "I have the right to" statement with us?
Absolutely. My statement would be, I have the right to be safe and confident.
I have the right to be heard, to speak up, to speak my mind, and to call out situations where I see people behaving badly and discriminating against anyone.
Bari and Meredith, thank you so much for joining the Aspire podcast today and for your honesty and advocacy.
Thank you both so much for your lifelong activism and for your support of I Have the Right To. You can find Bari and Meredith's Troublemakers for Good at Troublemakers for Good on Instagram, on YouTube, and you can buy an I Have the Right To necklace and other merch, including my favorite tie-dyed sweatshirt, in support of nonprofits at shop.troublemakers.org. We will put that link in the show notes. And to our listeners, thank you for being here, and remember, you have the right to make good trouble.
Thank you so much for listening. Like and subscribe to the podcast on all platforms. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please give us a 5-star rating and tell your friends about Aspire. Follow us on social media at I Have the Right To. Learn more about workshops and programming available for students, educators, parents, and community members at ihavetherightto.org.